A warm welcome to this special program from the World Economic Forum in Dalian. I'm Geoff Cutmore, you're very welcome. The key topic at the heart of our discussion for this session: by 2025, half of the world's Fortune 500 companies will be headquartered in emerging markets. But that throws up some very interesting questions. What industries and what economies are going to drive the next wave of growth? How will many of these companies overcome some of the structural challenges that we currently see in the global economy today? I have a terrific panel here with me to talk about these issues. Let's introduce them to you. Weiwei is the founder and president of Beijing Mobike. Thank you very much for joining us here. Aireen Omar comes to us from AirAsia, Malaysia, where she is the CEO. Sergey Solonin is the CEO of Qiwi, Russia. Let me introduce BG Srinivas, the executive director and managing director of PCCW, Hong Kong. And Catherine Wood, the CEO of ARC Investment Management. This is a company that invests in disruptive industries. And Catherine, maybe I could start with you, and I can run along all of our panel here to get our discussion going. And what I would like to ask you is, what advances in your sector or in the industries that you look at, briefly, do you think will drive the next wave of growth?
Okay, we think we've focused our research on 5 general purpose technologies.
Microphone, please.
Genomic sequencing.
Microphone, please. Microphone, please.
Which is all about artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, and so forth, and blockchain technology. We think the most underestimated of these is blockchain technology.
BG.
In our industry, where we focus on telecommunications, technology services, and media, we are driven by the changes which is happening in the consumer consumption of video. We are clearly seeing 2 things. One, there is a clear accelerated adoption of digital lifestyle by consumer. On the other hand, in the enterprise sector, we are seeing enterprises going through massive amount of digital transformation. Under these 2 themes, we are clearly coming from where, on one hand, you need high-speed, reliable connectivity. On the other hand, you need to bring in the disruption of what's happening in the industry and bring in technologies which will enable enterprise to go through digital transformation. And in that context, we are investing our resources into the next generation of technologies, which include analytics, which include Internet of Things, which include, in the video space, we are already one of the first movers in adapting to VR technologies as we move more and more of our content onto smart devices. And we've clearly seen, by adapting to new technologies, we are able to leapfrog and expand our footprint outside of Hong Kong. For example, in our media business, when we were looking at how do we expand our footprint very quickly outside of Hong Kong, we chose the digital platform, which enabled us to leapfrog, and today we are present in 22 countries in the span of just 2 years.
I'm very interested in digital media, not least because I am of it, in a sense. I am a content provider myself. My question would be to you, we appear to be in a transformation phase here, shifting from old media to new media, and yet there seems to be some confusion as to who the winners are going to be in the future. How do you, I mean, the answer, of course, is always in what the consumer chooses, but how do you re-engage the consumer at this point in digital media?
See, today, the phenomena of the fact that consumer is adapting to more and more digital lifestyle, I don't think is reversible. But at the same time, in the context of what we need to do as an organization when we are adapting to the digital media, is to ensure that the one thing it provides, the platform provides interactivity. It's a 2-way stream, unlike the linear TV channels. And hence, you have a platform. We also have to leverage the social networks to enable and understand what the consumers is looking for. Again, depends on what content you provide. If it's entertainment, you can use the social media to understand the customer psyche in terms of what kind of demand and what kind of content you need to provide. But if it comes to news channels, you need to also ensure in the digital space that you have curated news going out. Today, there's so much news out there, and then there's so much noise about fake news. We need to understand and be responsible to ensure that whatever we put out there is authentic.
Catherine, just to bring you back into this for a moment, there was a view that the platforms win. Now we've gone to a world where it seems that content is important once again. Now we're also arguing about whether it'll be mobile or whether it'll be televisual or what the right package is ultimately for the consumer to digest that content. You have to put your money where your mouth is. Yeah. You have to invest in these businesses. Which of them do you think wins?
Well, we've seen over the years, over the many years of media, this trade-off, or this contest between content and distribution, back and forth, back and forth. It's the history of media. We think platforms are very important. I mean, when we look at a Netflix, for example, any platform that understands its customer and tailors media, for each customer, understands not only what each person likes, but can formulate new programs, new media because of what it sees in demand from its existing customers is going to continue to pull ahead, we think. So of course, one of our biggest investments is Netflix, which you can say is both a platform company and a content company. They're fusing.
Yes.
If I can just add on to that, again, in the context of emerging markets, platforms become equally important because in some of these markets, the network speeds are pretty slow. Unless your platform is able to cater to handling video streaming on slow networks, if you don't get that right, then you don't give a good customer experience. And that's what we learned as we engaged in expanding our footprint in emerging markets across Southeast Asia. So in fact, we invested in a company based out of Silicon Valley, which had a patent to technology, which is adaptive bitrate streaming, which can cater to good video quality even on slow networks. Yeah. So platform definitely is important. Yes, you need to customize your content and be relevant to the markets you're operating in. And you have to also be making sure that this is not something static. You have to be extremely dynamic because the customer sentiments keep changing. You have to monitor that closely, and you have to keep reinventing yourself, not on a yearly basis, but on a quarterly or even a monthly basis.
And I would add, to finish off the question, that mobile is where everything is going, right? We're going to carry it with us. We're going to carry our content with us, where we want it, when we want it, any time of the day.
Which leads us very neatly on to Sergey. In the payments industry, talk to us a little bit about how you see the future for your particular market.
Well, just returning back for fintechs, we see platforms as also as a very important trend right now, but in some other form, because we see banks as platforms for the future, and we see that without banks being good platforms for fintechs, for newcomers, it will be difficult to develop at the pace we see right now. So platformization in fintech is also very important. Another thing that we see right now is, of course, blockchains. So blockchains are everywhere, and we see that it is also an enabler for some other businesses through ICOs, through different kind of technologies. We also think that for us, it is very important to have right infrastructure, digital infrastructure for identification. So we're working in Russia now with biggest banks to make a platform for digital identity throughout the banking system.
Well, let me interrupt you and ask you a question then. With apologies to anybody in the room who works in a bank or for a bank, I thought fintech was going to disrupt the banks. And ultimately, the banks disappear and we end up with a bunch of fintech companies that bring us blockchain and do all the things that banks used to do, but they're called something different. Is that not going to happen? It sounds like you're still stuck in an old-fashioned world.
Yes, kind of. We thought the same way maybe 3 years ago and 4 years ago. So we thought that we are one of the disruptors as Qiwi for the banking system in Russia, and we thought that it is a new world for disruptors like us to attack banking system. But lately, we don't see that happening. First of all, because banks do invest a lot of money into fintechs right now, and also because of some regulatory issues that we face. So so I think we will still see some disruption on the market, but the weight now moves towards collaborative forms for fintechs with banks instead of like being just disruptive.
What do the old-fashioned banks bring to fintech that fintech can't do on its own?
Well, first of all, it is compliance and KYC, I think. So this is a relationship with regulatory bodies. Some of the banks are very successful in opening their platforms for startups and doing a lot of work on investment side together with startups. Well, I think that we will see many incumbents as leaders in new digital forms of fintechs.
Fascinating. I think that's very interesting because people often think about technology as being revolutionary, but in this sense, it's going to be evolutionary working with existing platforms.
It's becoming more and more.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the most stunning statistic I've heard over the last few months is that mobile payments here in China have quadrupled in the last year to, depends on whose estimate you use, somewhere between $6 and $8.6 trillion. So WeChat and Alipay account for 92% of mobile payments. And I heard a statistic here that I think mobile payments now account for 48% of retail sales. That's incredible. In the United States in the last year, we thought we were doing well with a 39% increase in mobile payments to $112 billion. I'm talking about 8.6 trillion and 112 billion. So what China and developing and emerging markets are doing is they're leapfrogging some old ways of doing things because they don't have the credit card or the traditional payment rails. They were restricted in some way, and they don't have the bricks and mortar. So it's much easier for fintech or tech fin, as the head of strategy at Ant Financial said yesterday, to happen here because tech is the operative word, and tech means declining cost curves, and that enables more activity.
So what is the cause of the inertia in Western democracies?
It's the legacy infrastructure. It is the old credit card systems, sorry, Visa and MasterCard, but the old rails, right? And bricks and mortar. I can't tell you, I'd walk around New York City and see new banks going up on each corner. Bricks and mortar, and I will never go into a bank. I was trying to figure that out. They were trying to say the relationship with the customer, the face-to-face, no. So they're having to change that strategy, but they've sunk the costs.
And so they're unwilling to embrace new technologies that immediately...
They're going to have to. They're going to have to because WeChat and Alipay will end up, I think, at some point in the rest of the world. Jack Ma was in Detroit last week or this week, speaking to small businesses, saying, the Chinese consumer is interested in your products. So, that's the proverbial camel's nose under the tent. Of course, these small and medium businesses want to do business with China. Okay, what is the payment mechanism that they're going to set up?
Yeah. PG.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Apart from the legacy infrastructure, whether it is buildings, IT infrastructure, it's also a big problem in the mindset. And the change will not happen because they have to cannibalize their current businesses. And that's a massive disruption the banks will go through. But as was talked about in China, even in India, we are seeing technology leapfrogging. The initiative under the Unified Payment Gateway, which is coming up, this will enable mobile payments to happen up to 100,000 rupees without a transaction fee, zero transaction fee. This will create massive disruption for other payment engines which charge up to 2%. So that is the advantage some of the emerging economies have over the erstwhile legacy infrastructure which the big banks have.
I just want to ask one more question before we move on, and maybe it's useful for people in the audience here. What defines the tipping point for you as a manager or an owner of a business when you say, you know what, I just accept that I take the hit on the legacy costs and I embrace the technology and I move on? What is it that determines that decision that you make?
I think it's fear of being disintermediated completely. There are two different DNAs, though, too. It's very hard to make a leap when you've grown up in the old world. And as Mobike, yes, has taught us as well, it's very hard to leap into the new world. It's a different mindset. As a student of disruptive innovation, whenever I hear the big guys are coming after some new technology, I don't worry about it as much as most other people do. And I think Professor Klaus Schwab said it very well. It used to be that the big used to eat the small. Now it is the fast eat the slow, and I'm seeing it every day.
Aireen, let's come to you. Let's come back to the original question for a moment. You're in the aviation sector. You're providing a service to customers, delivering them from point A to point B. Also, you're delivering freight and doing other things in the airline sector. Where do you see the disruption in your business? What will drive the next wave of growth?
Well, for our operations, we're based in Southeast Asia, and what we have seen in our own operations is that there's tremendous growth in consumer-driven goods. There's tremendous growth in the demand for flying, and we have seen that Southeast Asia is probably one of the fastest growing in terms of the GDP, in terms of middle income. 50% of our population are young, and they're also based in urban areas. And we've seen rapid growth in the broadband technology, the use of mobile devices and everything. And we've seen population embracing technology and all that. And we see that as the population grow and become more prosperous, the demand for travel has increased tremendously, because there are three things generally when people have become richer. They want a car, they want a flat TV screen, and they also want to travel. And we've seen almost 50% of that want to travel. And hence, as a result, we see a lot of growth of low-cost carriers in the region, and about almost 60% of the air travel capacity comes from low-cost carriers. What we have seen also is that when they travel, they are demanding some experience. They want customized, personalized experience. And we at AirAsia realize this, and we embrace technology. And the good thing is that when we first started our operations, we started the bookings through the internet. We did not actually embrace travel agents and that sort of thing. We encourage people to book through the internet. And I think because of that, we had that advantage that 80% of our bookings comes through the internet, and we own that data. And when you own that data, there's a lot of things that you can do with it. And we have been investing in a team to analyze the data, to understand the consumer behavior, the trends and behavior on how they book, how they search in the internet. And as a result, we'll be able to customize products that's more personalized to their needs. And as a result, we'll be able to provide more a product that they don't realize that they want it, or subtly that they need to go on a vacation or need to travel more, or they need to buy certain food or add more baggages or introduce them to other vacations. And we've seen the internet conversion rate increase from 4% to 8%. And we have only used 10% of our data. So for us, we see that connectivity is key in our region in the sense of not just facilitating the consumer demand of travel, but also connectivity is key in terms of facilitating the growth of other industries like infrastructure, education, manufacturing. You need connectivity to grow in the region. And with ASEAN looking at single aviation market, looking at single economic community, ASEAN economic community, you see that growth will be rapid, and we'll see there'll be a lot more growth coming from that region. And I think you'll see other technology that facilitates consumer-driven growth to also grow as well. So for us, we feel we have to embrace technology. Digital is key, to the point where we also have an innovation hub in our company where we test new ideas. We encourage our own staff to explore that ideas and have a discussion around whatever exhibits that we have in Innovation Lab. This is really so that we're always at the forefront of what we do, and we continue to dominate the market in the region.
Let me jump in and just make a point. I dislike air travel. It's not a great experience as far as I'm concerned. I get roughed up as I go through the airport on the way in. I'm then seen as a retail opportunity, and I'm forced to walk around a whole carousel of perfumes and alcohol, which I don't want to buy necessarily from that location. And then I'm forced to wait several hours for my plane to be ready to board, which may or may not be ready to board, depending on whether it was late coming from its last location. Now, if the future is about anything with regard to technology, it's about convenience, and it's about me having it when I want it in the way that I want it.
Yes.
This is not a criticism leveled at AirAsia, but clearly there's something wrong with the way we travel at the moment.
Yes.
How do you change that? How does the industry change that?
Yes, I agree with you. As we grow, the volume will grow. But unfortunately, the airport space doesn't grow along as fast as how the volume or traffic volume that we have created. And this is something that we have to work closely with the authorities, the Ministry of Transport, the airport authorities, the home ministries where they handle immigration and security. This is where we've been pushing for more digital check-in processes, like using facial recognition or biometrics, where the flow would be better in terms of once you check in, everything is secured in terms of the data that's required from a passenger, and that is being shared across all authorities of every airport that we fly to. Also, we've been pushing this, and we're looking at facial recognition check-in that will facilitate the flow, because the volume is going to get bigger and bigger. And it's really important for the passengers to enjoy that journey. So for us, digital doesn't come in terms of just increasing the revenue base, but how does it improve the passenger's whole experience and journey? How do we use digital also to take advantage of the information that we have on the aircraft, so that the engineers and the pilots know what they need to do to minimize the aircraft on ground time or delays? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. And this is something that it takes a lot of mindset change across not just our company, but also with the ministries, with the authorities, and everyone else.
China is a marketplace that is still rapidly growing in terms of air travel. They have the opportunity, using your leapfrog expression, Catherine, to not make the mistakes that were made in the past. And from the world you describe, it sounds like there are lots of legacy costs, there's lots of legacy bureaucracy, and there's a lack of imagination about how you get me onto my plane more smoothly and to my destination feeling happier. If you could offer perhaps the Chinese authorities one piece of advice from your expertise, what would it be?
What would it be? If I could have them
You're starting from the beginning.
Yeah.
You're designing an airport.
Right.
You're laying out the terminal.
Right.
What advice about how you're processed through the terminal?
The design of the airport is very key because a lot of the airports that we fly into, the design is terrible. You have to walk, a passenger have to walk maybe sometimes, 20 miles or so, or half an hour to get into a gate from the moment you check in. That's not how it should be. The passenger experience should be the moment you get in, you also get out quite immediately too. So the design of the airport, you need to involve the airline. You need to understand what kind of passenger traffic that's coming in, what kind of growth forecast that there is, what are the requirements in terms of when the passenger lands or when the passenger boards the plane, how do you facilitate that kind of volume, what kind of volume are you looking at per minute, what sort of takeoff and landing are we looking at as well. So the whole design is important. How do we base technology there? How do we ensure that the passenger experience in the airport is also a pleasant one, meaning that they could check quite easily, maybe from their own devices, whether the gate is ready for them to board, or whether or the airport authorities can actually check where the passenger is to ensure that the aircraft is not delayed. If he or she is shopping somewhere else, you can detect them.
And just one final question before we move on. As you walked into the forum at the beginning of this event and you noticed the aircraft sitting just after the security check-in, the drone that's purposed to carry humans, did you tremble with fear? Did you think, oh my goodness, that's the ultimate disruption? My airline industry is going to look very different in 20 years' time if everybody takes their own individual drone to the destination they want to get to?
No, not really. I think at the end of the day also, can the drone carry lots of passengers at a time, basically? I mean, we're also looking at ways of, people are talking about pilotless planes. I think that is, I'm quite intrigued by that. And I think that will probably solve the pilot shortages that you experience sometimes globally, once in a while, really.
Yes.
And maybe that can work. Maybe it's a start in terms of carrying cargo goods or so, or maybe shorter flight hours, or maybe we could start with just one pilot instead of two pilots and a robot next to it.
Yes. Yes.
Really, so this kind of things we shouldn't really fear. We should really just understand how this thing can really work and fit into the whole scheme of things in your operation.
Catherine, as I use you as our technology conscience, should she be more worried? I mean, is this a sector that it's still yet to be disrupted? Seriously?
Well, as we think about, because it's even worse in the United States. I mean, having experienced 3 o'clock in the morning landings, and it's normal. The cabs are waiting for us.
What, John F. K. difficult to get through customs? Immigration a problem? No,
So we've done
not.
a lot of work on autonomous vehicles generally, drones less so, but autonomous vehicles. We think autonomous taxi networks are going to challenge, especially in the more densely populated West Coast, East Coast of the United States, more, even if it's a 7-8 hour ride in an autonomous vehicle and you're just kicking back doing your work or watching Netflix or whatever, I probably
Which is a
would
company
choose
you've
to do
invested
that.
in, just
Yes.
remind us,
Not talking my book, I'm just illustrating a point. So yes, we've been actually doing the modeling around that where it would make more sense to challenge there's just such a hassle factor with airlines that the autonomous vehicles, that this may be another reason that they'll take off.
BG.
Yeah, just to chip in, if you you're talking about disruption now. While drones could be one extreme, but in the intermediary, I think there is a clear opportunity for Uberization of private chartered aircrafts. And today it's expensive, but if you use the Uber concept, maybe there is an intermediate phase with which you can create disruption. And with respect to airports, today there's a very high concentration of few airports for big cities. I think if you take the London example, you can go through the city airport within 30 minutes. The throughput is pretty quick. So if you can create smaller hubs of airports rather than concentrating everything in Heathrow, building a third runway, or for that matter in JFK as well, if you can create smaller hubs, then you've created a much smoother flow. And if you can also bring in the concept of Uberization for private aircrafts, then you're giving an alternative channel instead of putting everybody in a jumbo plane and trying to go through the same narrow bottleneck.
Uberization of aircraft. I think you've now just coined a phrase. Okay. Hopefully that gets some mileage. Let's see if we can make it go viral. Weiwei, let's come to you. You are in the middle of this amazing adventure to bring Mobike to the masses, and you're growing incredibly rapidly. What do you see as the potential from here for your business? Where do you see the opportunity, globally or just in China? Share with us the vision that is driving Mobike at the moment.
Just now, panelists like Catherine have already touched upon the rapid progress of mobile technology, the mobile payment, and etc. And I think this is the general context for the birth and the growth of Mobike. We can use the mobile phone to open the bicycle and to use the bicycle. So this is the general context. And also China enjoys a fairly good foundation or basis. Based on that, we actually upgrade the previous model, and we established the Mobike. Well, coming back to your question, what are the driving forces? Well, let me very briefly talk about our growth in the past 14 months. In last year's World Earth Day, we launched the Mobike, and up to now, we have had our presence in 130 cities in the world. Every day, we have tens of thousands, or we have a large number of users of our Mobikes. Well, we have really achieved the leapfrog development. We can see that internet has helped us to overcome the various barriers, and now we have the smartphones, and everyone becomes a node in the information network, and they are well connected on this network. So we will have the connection between men and the tools, and the connection among the tools. For Mobike, we believe we have accomplished the connection between mankind and the tools. Actually, this is part of the Internet of Things.
Very interesting, which is you've taken control of the manufacturing and you've taken that forward to the service delivery at the point of sale to the customer. Why was it necessary to do that? Because for industrial historians, that looks like an old-fashioned thing to do. Normally, today, everybody talks about you outsource to somebody else who does it better than you can do it, and you focus on your particular niche. And if your niche is that point of sale to the customer, that's fine. But you have taken charge of the manufacturing as well, and it seems to me that you look a little bit like an old-fashioned business, albeit one that's growing incredibly quickly with wonderful technology at the point of sale.
Well, there are a few reasons behind that. Actually, we redesigned the bikes we're using in the Mobike. Yes, bicycles have been there for like 200 years, and the bicycles are owned by individuals and used by individuals. However, the scenario individuals use bicycles is very different from the Mobike model. As you can see, for Mobikes, 24 hours around the clock, the bikes are always in the open place, and they are used by all potential consumers. So the bikes must satisfy the requirement concerning reliability. Also, we are having the shared bike model, and we don't have any repair or maintenance stations. Well, you may be concerned about the stealing or the destruction of the bikes. That's why we have a very different operation environment for the bikes. So we redefine the bikes. This is the first reason. Well, in the early days of my Mobike days, very few people were confident in our business model, and the traditional bike manufacturers were quite suspicious. But we made some major breakthroughs. For example, we redesigned the bikes and adopted many new manufacturing techniques. And in the future, we may introduce new materials for the bike production. Indeed, traditional bike manufacturers were reluctant to cooperate with us, so we had to identify our own bike suppliers. And now we have the whole value chain, and also I can open my needs to all the interested manufacturers of bikes. This is an open environment. We do not have exclusive bike manufacturers, but as you may know, in the early days of the entrepreneurship, maybe we really need to identify specific suppliers who are like us, willing to break the traditional practices.
Uber come into this marketplace, the Chinese market, and we have seen it fight a very aggressive battle with Didi, which has driven down prices and made profitability look like a distant achievement. Ultimately, we know what happened in that story. Two became one in this market. How do we know that two don't become one in your market? How do you make sure that Mobike either acquires your competitor or at least has the opportunity to remain one of the leading companies of two or three that are in this space? Is there any likelihood, you think, that you're going to merge with your rival at some point?
OK， 对，大家就是因为
Yes, exactly. The competition among Didi and Uber and Kuaidi have impressed many of us. So when it comes to the shared bikes, naturally there is a comparison, or it can associate us with the old history. But there is major difference. When Uber was competing with Didi, a major beneficiary behind its mobile payment providers, because all of a sudden people began to hail the cars and use the services of mobile payment. So the competition between Uber and Didi have actually benefited the consumers and also the mobile payment providers. The reason I say there is a major difference between the two kinds of competition is because the platform for the car-hailing business is connecting people who are driving and people who need the car services. And for Mobike, we are connecting on our platform and the machine as the vehicle and also man and machine. Besides, we also have assets. So compared with our rivalries, we follow different roadmaps. This business tests the intensity of your assets and also your operational efficiency. Otherwise, it's meaningless to acquire them. Apart from that, you've mentioned how can we keep our leading position. As I understand the question, well, we are the first shared bike provider for urban areas. So from the very beginning, we have pondered over the issue as to how can we operate the vehicles in the bikes in city environment. We have done a lot of researches on this, and we have deep thinking over this, and these have led us to the right way to go. If our competitors want to follow suit, they are following us, so they are behind us. So in the product experience and also the operation efficiency, we will safely take the lead.
Final question before we move back into the panel discussion. What is your timeline for making a profit?
Well, yes. Everybody is interested in the question of when the money can be made. If we want to make money, now we can be profitable. But is it our purpose for the moment? This can trigger discussion. I like to quote the film, which is on the story of the startup of Facebook. Jack Zuckerberg was discussing with one of the founders. His partner said, we already have 20,000 users. Should I post an advertisement or not? And Mr. Zuckerberg said, I don't know where it will go, but I know it is cool. If you post a Pepsi advertisement there, it is no longer cool. I'm holding a party, I'm connecting people, but if you tell me the party is going to be over at 8 o'clock, it is no longer cool. So we have our purpose. The Mobike business, it's only starting. We are moving into various fronts. And the definition of this circle can be expanding. We can expand the market. I think it is more interesting than making money now.
Former journalist, so you know all the tricks, but you didn't really answer the question. When are you going to make a profit?
Well, I have answered your question, sir. Well, if we want to make profits, we can make it now. But it is not our purpose for the moment. We want to expand markets. Well, Amazon hasn't made money in 10 years.
So let me ask you a question that I think brings everybody else back into the conversation here. Mobike operates in many cities, but there are some exceptions, and you are going to find it challenging starting up in some cities because they just won't be welcoming. And for whatever reason, they'll decide that they don't want to license you, or you're a threat to the local competition, or that the urban layout of the city is just not appropriate. Can you share with us just some of your experiences of having dealt with perhaps local governments or officials who just didn't seem to understand, and how you overcame some of their reluctance to buy into the Mobike story?
Well, I'm not pro-revolution. I'm not an imposter. I'm not a hardliner. But what I want to share here is that if government is reluctant to welcome us, usually there might be some existing stations where the government has invested it into some of the assets of bikes, or the government has been providing the services to citizens for many years. So for cities like this, they are reluctant to accept us. The negotiation indeed is very difficult. But if it's a brand new city and there are no fixed or legacy bikes, the government is very willing to accept us for several reasons. So first, we are free. We don't need any investment from the government. We don't need the government to provide with us any other help. And most importantly, we are free. And second, we have helped governments to solve the problem of short distance travel, and we are providing great convenience to the users, citizens. The transportation efficiency has enhanced. The life quality of the citizens have improved. And also in many jammed cities, the efficiency of riding a bike is more quicker, and also it takes up less space than a car parking lot. So from these perspectives, for short distance travel, we are providing a very efficient and cost-effective solution. And when it comes to the life quality, once we enter into a certain city, we will try to apply for more parking places for bikes. If it is a bike agreeable city, I believe it is also an inhabitable city. If the citizens in a city wants to jump out of a box, I mean the box of a building, concrete, and a box of a car, if they want to ride a bike and enjoy the outside air, I think the activity and the vitality of the city will be boosted. And you will find some of the smaller businesses will go along with that. There will be re-exploration of the city and the injection of new vitality into the city. Even when governments are reluctant to accept us, we can accept that, the fact that we are not welcomed. It's difficult to satisfy everybody's taste, and they have their considerations and legacy reasons. We are never hardliners. We will keep the talk and communicate with the city to learn about what they want.
Indeed. Sergey, I wanted to just bring you into this because we had a conversation and you said that you started a business and the authorities effectively closed you down. Now, I think this is one of the great challenges that we see around the world, that through the use of regulation, taxation, or just old-fashioned vested interests and quasi-corruption, it is sometimes difficult to innovate and to take advantage of what technology can bring in terms of driving growth in your business to a new level. How do you overcome that challenge sometimes? And what advice can you give? I mean, is it the right decision just to walk away sometimes? Or do you persist? And if you persist, how do you persist?
Well, the story began 2 years ago when we announced, in Qiwi, we announced our own cryptocurrency in Russia. And immediately we were approached by the regulator who said that we cannot do that. And we actually stopped, and it took, for me, it took 2 years of relationship with the governments, educating the government, and working together on investigating the technology. And today we are forming more partnership. So we organized consortium of banks together with regulator in order to look forward on the technologies and think a little bit ahead of what's going to be and how to regulate it. There is always a problem with fintech because regulatory is very important. So you cannot work on many areas without the banking license in Russia and in many countries of the world. So you have to get this license ahead, and it is very difficult for a regulator to let you do anything before. So showing up your technology and letting you do everything before they regulate. So usually they want to regulate early. The way around that, again, we see in forming sandboxes. So we're talking with central bank in Russia about sandboxing several projects right now. And there are many other projects in London, in Singapore, and other countries where you can see the same approach. So sandboxing literally says that you can do anything, but when the regulator allowing you to do that in a special territory sometimes, or it does review your project and before you become big, so they look at you on a regular basis. But in general, in our field, it is enormously important to have good relationships with the government and with the regulator. Otherwise, you cannot go forward.
No, I mean, I think the cryptocurrency story is very interesting, but I understand why central banks and governments are very nervous, because it's all about control. And they fear that they're going to lose control of the monetary mechanism if they introduce another currency that they don't actually issue themselves. But Catherine, just to bring you in on this, there is a point where governments have to acknowledge that shifts are taking place, and they just have to go for it. Yep. Are you finding that governments in emerging markets are more willing to go for it than they are in Europe or in the United States?
Well, I think in the emerging markets, this concept of financial inclusion is a very big topic of conversation and policy making. And you know, if you think about the Mobikes and the ride-sharing services, which have proliferated, I mean, they're skyrocketing here. We've got a lot of statistics on them. This truly is financial inclusion. And if you approach the regulators that way, you say, look, what you're allowing here is, so I buy a car. What am I buying? It's a big ticket item. I'm prepaying for a lot of transportation, and yet I use it 4% of the day. So it's a stranded asset. What we're doing is freeing up assets and allowing people to pay as you go instead of paying up front. That's financial inclusion. I was on a panel yesterday, and it took people a little while to understand what I meant by financial inclusion, but that truly is financial inclusion. And once you convince policymakers that that's really what is going on here, it's much easier. So I'm finding, yes, anything that involves financial inclusion is, from a regulator's point of view, much easier to accept here than it is in the rest of the world, where, you know, cars are ubiquitous. Here, as I understand it, 20% of the eligible population has licenses. In the United States, that number is 70%. So very, very different circumstance.
I thought Premier Lee's speech was interesting in the focus that he gave to inclusive technological advancement. Absolutely. And it's something that gets a little bit of lip service in the West, but people haven't really figured out how you can address the displacement that may take place as a result of AI, Internet of Things, robotics coming into the workplace, and so on and so forth. I am minded to quote John Maynard Keynes from 1932, I believe it was, who said that we would all be working 15-hour days because of the tremendous advancements brought by the Industrial Revolution of the time. Well, of course, it didn't quite work out like that, unfortunately, and I find myself working many more hours than 15 a week. I think it was 15 hours a week, he suggested. So my question would be, on that issue of inclusion, how do we make sure that it happens? How do we make sure that displacement doesn't end up with people on the scrap heap of life? So
there are two worlds here. I think here in this world, where the populations are so large, we're talking about technological change. The five general purpose technology platforms, we describe them as they are technologically enabled disruptions that are going to change the way the world works and make it a better place. They're a function of declining cost curves. A lot of people think of this concept of deflation, price deflation, as a bad thing because of 08, 09. Oh no, deflationary bust. there is such thing, and I think you're seeing it in Asia, as a deflationary boom. So you go down declining cost curves. It costs less and less to provide services here, and you get an explosion in demand. So I think the growth rates that people are so suspicious of here, the 6.9% or whatever they are, I think they're actually real. So you have a much better shot here because the populations are so big, and these are scaling questions. In the United States, I think, yes, we're technologically, we're advanced, and we want to continue to advance. It's just we don't have the scaling opportunities that we do here and the virgin territory. So it will happen. It'll happen more slowly. You know, I said to you before, I feel a little bit like a dinosaur around here just because I'm supposed to be WeChatting, and I wouldn't know how to do that, right? So we're not used to that sort of thing. So you're just moving so much faster here because you can.
BG.
Yeah, if I can add, another great example of financial inclusion is what's happening in the financial sector in India. With Aadhaar, which is a biometric authentication, the cheapest KYC in the world, which has been established. And this is in the context of financial inclusion of those who are in the unbanked. If you look at the cities, the ATM access, almost 80% of the ATMs reside in just 40 cities out of the 9,000 cities in India. So for the rest, simply accessing a bank, simply accessing an ATM is almost an impossible task. So there is no legacy infrastructure. So the Aadhaar is enabling a cheaper way of getting millions, hundreds and millions of the unbanked onto the banking system with an extremely cost-effective way of running a KYC and using mobile as an instrument, which can leapfrog physical infrastructure. That's how the financial inclusion is happening. And also ensuring that the transaction, which is microtransactions, does not involve any transaction fee. And that kind of disruption is going to really disrupt the established players. And in the context of emerging markets, this is the advantage countries have, that they're not stuck by the legacy infrastructure.
Can I just add something to that and just bring blockchain into it? Because I think blockchain will do the same thing.
Exactly.
It's the distribution of verification, right? So everything's transparent. I mean, there's one example, the South Korean to Philippine corridor, a company, Bluepan, is operating, and remittances, the remittance market, which is a $600 billion market, but which it charges outrageous fees right now, 8% to 20%. They have taken 20% of the remittance market from South Korea to Philippines, and it's Bitcoin. In Bitcoin. Now, do the sender and receiver know this? No, these are rails again. They're technology rails. So this is money over IP. Money over IP is like voice over IP. You can distribute it at free. You just have to do the fiat to crypto conversion rates, but they're much lower, much, much lower than the Western unions and so forth.
We just have about 5 minutes left here. So in the final 5 minutes, what I'd like to do is just talk about Donald Trump. It's a topic that ignites passions, but on a more serious note, we have seen a shift, it seems to me, in the way we now think about cross-border activity and the idea that we replace free trade with trade with special interests, and that is bring back manufacturing to the United States. You can operate in our country, but you need to bring something to the table. The money should be coming in, the money should not be going out. It feels as though something has shifted, which is going to affect the way people think about investing in future technologies, not only environmental, but in all sorts of areas. Could you just share with me as a panel some thoughts as to what difference you think this makes when it comes to how we actually achieve this next wave of growth in technology and cross-border activity? Weiwei, maybe I can just start with you on this, because you've taken your business out of China now, you've gone to Japan, you've gone to the UK. I don't know whether you have any plans to take it to the United States in the short term, but do you feel that the world has become a slightly darker place when it comes to you going international?
Well, how can I put this? We are operating now in China. We have been establishing our presence in UK, Japan, and we have the plan to go to United States. We have many partners along this journey. We are having a very close partnership with Taos Chemicals, and they are helping us to research the tires for Mobike, which will provide a better customer experience. As we plan to enter into territory or market, we will surely have a lot of discussion and persuasion with the local government. For business expansion, we will have the red carpet country market easier to be accessed. United States, well, we can discuss it. It's not that, I will put it in this way. Is it possible to assemble some of the parts in United States? There is the possibility. We have the collaboration partner of Fuscom who has their plant in United States. So we are not isolated and will not be isolated because of some policy. I believe that the convenience provided to cities, the job opportunities that's created, the manufacturing business that it has promoted, are all the benefits we can bring to a market. If we enter into a country's market, we will provide job opportunities there as well. We will employ the local talents. There are more solutions than difficulties.
IPOing the business, would it put you off a primary listing in New York or a secondary listing in New York?
When I started this company, my goal was not an IPO. Maybe one day as it develops, it will need an IPO, but it's not to be considered now.
Thank you very much indeed. Just to run down the panel then, some thoughts on this. Has the world changed or is the whole story overblown?
Yeah, I think it has changed a bit. You see the shift more focus now into Asia Pacific, primarily Southeast Asia, also China and India. As I mentioned before, the population base in Southeast Asia is over 600 million. If we include China and India, that's over 3 billion. And Southeast Asia is one of the fastest growing economy in the region with one of the fastest growing middle income and also population base. So you see there will be a lot of growth coming in there, and I would see a lot of big companies will want to invest in this region too. And in terms of technology advancement and innovation, we've seen good products coming from Korea, from China, and even India as well. So this is something that I think, well, if the United States want to be more closed, well, we have the other region who are actually eager and more vibrant and younger, who want to develop newer things. And I think, yeah, you see a lot of more capital investment coming into this region as opposed to what you've seen in Europe or in the United States.
Very interesting. Yeah, BG.
Yeah, I think the challenge today of the perceptions created in the US about everything to be blamed on globalization is completely at fault. The success of the United States has been that historically it's always been an open platform, encouraging people, free trade, and encouraging even students to come into their universities and nurturing talent and innovating. And that is going to be significantly lost if they start looking inward. The other thing which one has to demystify is the fact that technology disruption has created inequality within the country. There is also an unequal distribution of wealth within the country, even if you set aside the problem of globalization. So unless there is a rethink in terms of understanding the real challenges which is posed by technology disruption, automation, which requires a lot of reskilling of talent within the country, one. Number two, there's an inequitable, significant inequality within the ecosystem. The top 5%, the top 1% are enjoying all the benefits. The rest feel left out. And it's all blamed on globalization, and that is actually not necessarily true. And hence, in my view, this perception has to be corrected. And the inclusion within the community has to be championed both by the government and the industry. And unfortunately, today, the leadership is not really inclined to think in that context, and that's where the challenge is. And I don't think this is a global phenomenon. Yes, there are fears in UK, there's fears exhibited in the US, but I don't think all of Europe is thinking in that context.
Sergey.
Donald Trump is our friend. At least we thought
personally,
so.
Or just no. In the metaphorical?
Yeah. And I think the latest developments in Russian authorities' thinking is that world should be governed by some deals. And we would love to do some deal, I think, with lifting sanctions over Russia and, I don't know, freeing up something in trade. But it seems that it is very difficult to do. So I'm for the open world, definitely, and free trade. But it seems that the world is a little bit more complex recently.
And Catherine, I'll give you the last word here, because I'm very interested to know whether at the sharp end, as you sit down with businesses in disruptive sectors that are really enthusiastic and ready to go, you sense maybe a little bit of caution or reluctance to make more ambitious decisions because they feel that the world is a little different.
A couple of things. What I've learned to do is not to listen to what he says, President Trump says, but to what he does. He was elected, believe it or not, because of these issues that we're talking about. There's a tremendous amount of frustration in the country. My background's economics. My greatest fear was protectionism. He surrounded himself by individuals who are, they're saber rattling, much like there was in other administrations. You have to do that, but I don't think we're going to see that. What we are going to see is tax reform, which is going to, we're the highest tax country in the world. You cut the taxes, that's how you invite capital. That's a very friendly way of doing it. As far as innovation, he's the first president I've ever seen who has invited innovation-oriented, that was his first roundtable, brought the tech CEOs in. How can I help you? How can I help you? Even over the visa situation, how can I help you? Let's not send students who have been educated in the United States back to their home countries unless they want to go. Don't send them back, that's ridiculous. So I think he's a negotiator, and I actually think he's thinking in terms of how do I bring capital and encourage these innovators to continue to do what they're doing even more aggressively. So I'm much more optimistic, I think, than what I hear here, but I'm there, and so I see the nuances. Don't listen to what he says, watch what he does.
And I love the optimism at the end of a panel. That's always a good way to leave our audience. Thank you so much, our panelists. If we could congratulate them. And I'd like to just wrap up this CNBC conversation here at the World Economic Forum in Dalian. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.